The laughter cut through the air like broken glass. It wasn't soft. It wasn't nervous. It was loud, sharp, and deliberate, designed to sting. Phones were already up, tiny red recording lights blinking as if this humiliation were a show worth capturing. "Is this a joke?" The organizer sneered, his voice amplified by the open hall and the attention of hundreds of eyes. "You seriously thought this outfit was appropriate for a high-profile charity gala?" The young black woman stood frozen at the center of the grand lobby, marble floors gleaming beneath her worn shoes. Her hands trembled as she tried to smooth the creases of her simple navy dress, neatly pressed, carefully chosen, but painfully out of place among the designer gowns and tailored suits surrounding her. I'm here because I was invited," she said softly, her voice barely carrying past the echo of his ridicule. The organizer leaned back, arms crossed, scanning her from head to toe with exaggerated disgust. "Invited," he laughed again, louder this time. "Look around. Do you see anyone else dressed like they're going to a bus interview?" A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the crowd. "She doesn't belong here. Did she sneak in? Someone should call security." No one spoke up. No one stepped forward. The woman swallowed hard, her throat burning as heat rushed to her cheeks. She felt the weight of hundreds of stares pressing down on her, curious, judgmental, amused. Somewhere behind her, someone whispered, "This is so embarrassing," while another voice muttered, "Why would she even come?" Her name was Naomi Carter, and at that moment every ounce of dignity she had carried into that building felt like it was being stripped away in public. "I followed the instructions on the invitation," Naomi said again, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. She clutched the small envelope in her hand, the edges now bent and damp with sweat. It said formal attire. "This is the best I have," the organizer scoffed. "Best you have," he leaned in closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. "This event is sponsored by billionaires, world leaders, influential donors, people who expect a certain standard." He straightened and gestured dramatically toward her. "And you," he paused, letting the silence stretch, "you lower it." A few people laughed nervously, others shifted uncomfortably. Still no one intervened. Naomi's eyes shimmered. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not like this. She had already been stared at her whole life, judged, dismissed. But this was different. This was calculated cruelty performed for an audience. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking now. "I just need a moment to speak with someone in charge." The organizer barked a laugh. "I am in charge," he snapped. "And I'm telling you to leave before you embarrass yourself further." A hush fell over the lobby. Phones zoomed in. A woman in a diamond necklace raised her eyebrows but said nothing. A man near the back shook his head slowly, not in disagreement, but in detached amusement. Naomi's shoulders sagged. Her fingers curled tightly around the invitation, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure others could hear it. And that's when the organizer delivered the final blow. "You people always think you're entitled to spaces you haven't earned," he said coldly. "This isn't a handout. This is a privilege." The words hit harder than any slap ever could. Naomi gasped, the air leaving her lungs. The room seemed to tilt, the polished chandeliers blurring above her as shame and disbelief crashed over her in waves. Question of the day: have you ever been judged or humiliated because of how you looked, where you came from, or what you couldn't afford? How did it make you feel, and what do you think should happen in moments like this? Let us know in the comments and tell us where you're watching from today. As Naomi stood there utterly alone, something shifted at the edge of the crowd. A tall figure, silent until now, lowered his phone not to record but to observe. His gaze wasn't mocking. It was focused, calculating, almost protective. He glanced at Naomi, then at the organizer, and then, just for a split second, his eyes widened in recognition, because he knew something no one else in that room did. Something that would turn this entire scene upside down. And as Naomi's knees threatened to give way, unaware of the unseen force about to step in, one truth hung heavy in the air. This humiliation was about to cost someone everything. Let's go back to how this story truly began this morning. The day had begun long before the sun fully rose. Naomi Carter woke up to the sound of coughing, deep, rattling coughs that shook the thin walls of their small apartment. Her eyes snapped open instantly. For a moment she lay still on the narrow mattress, listening, counting the seconds between each cough, silently praying it wouldn't turn into another attack. "Mom," she whispered, already sitting up. The apartment was barely 2 rooms, a cramped bedroom Naomi shared with her younger sister, and a combined living space that doubled as a kitchen. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the heater rattled louder than it warmed, but Naomi kept the place spotless. Clean floors, folded blankets, order even when life felt anything but. She slipped her feet into worn slippers and hurried toward the couch where her mother slept propped up on pillows. Lena Carter was only 46, but illness had aged her. Dark circles rested permanently beneath her eyes, and her breathing always sounded like a struggle, as though each breath had to be negotiated with her lungs. "I'm okay," her mother murmured weakly, waving Naomi off before she even spoke. "Just give me a second." Naomi knelt beside her, one hand rubbing her mother's back in slow, practiced circles. She had learned these motions over years, what helped, what didn't, how to stay calm even when fear clawed at her chest. "You need your inhaler," Naomi said gently. "It's empty," Lena replied, not meeting her eyes. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She already knew. She stood and crossed the room, opening a kitchen cabinet that held little more than rice, a half-empty jar of peanut butter, and a stack of unpaid bills. She took down the inhaler anyway, turning it upside down, shaking it once, twice, though she knew better. Nothing. Behind her, her 16-year-old sister, Maya, appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is she bad again?" Maya asked quietly. Naomi forced a smile. "She's okay. Go get ready for school." Maya hesitated. "I can stay." "No," Naomi said firmly but kindly. "You're already late enough as it is." Maya nodded, though worry still clouded her face. She disappeared back into the bedroom, and Naomi exhaled slowly, steadying herself. This was her world. Naomi was 24 years old, too young to feel this tired, too old to still be hoping for miracles. She worked 2 part-time jobs, mornings cleaning offices downtown, evenings stocking shelves at a grocery store. Neither paid much. Together, they barely covered rent. Their father had died 5 years earlier in a workplace accident. No lawsuit, no compensation. Just silence and a folded flag they didn't know what to do with. Since then, Naomi had become everything at once. Daughter, caregiver, provider, protector. She never complained. Not out loud. After helping her mother sit up more comfortably, Naomi moved quietly through the apartment, starting her routine. She boiled water for instant oatmeal, dividing it carefully into 3 bowls. She added a spoonful of peanut butter to her mother's portion for protein, even though it meant less for herself. When she handed the bowl to Lena, her mother looked up at her with tired eyes filled with guilt. "You shouldn't have to do all this," Lena whispered. Naomi crouched in front of her, meeting her gaze. "You did it for us first. This is just my turn." That was Naomi's nature, steady, gentle, unbreakable in ways that didn't announce themselves. After breakfast, she helped Maya braid her hair, kissing her forehead before sending her off to school with reminders to stay warm and call if she needed anything. Only after the door closed did Naomi allow herself to sag slightly against it, her strength faltering for just a heartbeat. Then she straightened. Today mattered. She went back into the bedroom and opened the small closet. Inside hung a handful of clothes, most thrifted, some repaired so many times they barely resembled their original form. At the very back, covered in a plastic garment bag, was the dress, the navy blue dress. She pulled it out carefully, smoothing the fabric with reverence. She had bought it secondhand 6 months ago, the same week her mother's diagnosis worsened. She had skipped meals for days to afford it. It wasn't flashy. No sequins, no labels, but it was clean, modest, elegant in its simplicity. Naomi laid it out on the bed and stared at it, her chest tightening with equal parts hope and fear. The invitation lay beside it. A thick envelope, cream-colored paper, gold lettering. She traced the words again as if they might disappear. "You are cordially invited to attend the Hartwell Foundation annual charity gala." Naomi hadn't believed it at first. She'd read the email 5 times when it arrived weeks earlier, convinced it was a mistake. She wasn't connected. She wasn't influential, but she had applied. Months ago, on a public library computer, she had filled out a grant application for caregivers, one she almost didn't submit, certain someone like her wouldn't even be considered. She had written honestly about her mother. About Maya, about the nights she cried in silence because strength was expected of her. She never expected a response. Yet here it was. The invitation didn't promise money. It didn't explain much at all, just an opportunity to attend, to be seen. And Naomi needed that chance more than anything. She packed a small bag, documents, her ID, her mother's medical records, creased from being carried everywhere. She checked on Lena one last time before leaving. "I'll be back before dark," Naomi said, brushing her mother's hair back gently. "Mrs. Alvarez is coming by to check on you." Lena nodded, gripping Naomi's hand. "Be careful," she whispered, "and don't let anyone make you feel small." Naomi smiled, though her eyes shone. "I won't." As she stepped outside into the cool morning air, the neighborhood stirred awake around her, buses groaning, children shouting, sirens in the distance. Life moved fast here, unforgiving and loud. Naomi walked toward the bus stop, invitation tucked safely in her bag, heart pounding with cautious hope. She had no idea how cruel the day would become, nor how much her life was about to change. By mid-morning, the ticking clock had grown deafening. Naomi sat on the edge of the bus seat, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her fingers ached. The bus lurched forward through traffic, stopping and starting in impatient jerks, but all Naomi could think about was time, how little of it they had left. Her phone buzzed. She already knew who it was before she looked. Maya. Naomi answered immediately. "Hey." Her breathing's worse, Maya said, her voice thin and strained. She was whispering, probably crouched in the hallway at school, trying not to draw attention. She tried to get up and almost fell. I had to help her back to the couch. Naomi closed her eyes. "How bad?" she asked, already bracing herself. "She's shaking," Maya replied, "and she keeps saying her chest feels tight." Naomi's chest tightened in response, mirroring her mother's pain as if they were still physically connected. "Did you call Mrs. Alvarez?" "She's on her way," Maya said quickly. "But the clinic called earlier too." Naomi's breath caught. "What did they say?" "They said if Mom doesn't start the new medication this week, it could turn into something permanent. They said next time it might not stabilize." The words hit like a hammer. Next time. Naomi stared at the bus window as buildings blurred past, her reflection staring back at her. Eyes tired, jaw clenched, fear barely held at bay. "How much?" she asked quietly. There was a pause. Then Maya whispered, $380. Naomi's stomach dropped. She had known it would be bad. She hadn't known it would be that bad. She did the math automatically, the way poverty trained her to do. Rent was due in 4 days. Her next paycheck, after taxes, would barely clear 200. She could sell the microwave, maybe, skip utilities for another month, ask the grocery manager for extra shifts, though she already worked until her legs burned. It still wouldn't be enough. "I'll figure something out," Naomi said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "I promise." She hung up and stared down at her hands as the bus pulled to a stop. She had tried everything: church charities, hospital payment plans, emergency assistance hotlines that kept her on hold until the call dropped. She stood in line at social services offices from dawn to closing, only to be told funds were exhausted. Last night, she'd even called her aunt in another state, someone who hadn't spoken to them since the funeral. The answer had been short and cold. "I can't get involved again, Naomi. I've got my own problems." Click. There was no one else. Her throat burned as she swallowed back tears. Crying wouldn't help. Panic wouldn't help. What she needed was a miracle, and she had learned not to wait for those. But today offered something different. The Hartwell Foundation. Naomi didn't know much about it beyond what the website said. Billionaire-backed, philanthropic, known for funding medical care, scholarships, housing initiatives. Most people like her never even made it past the application stage. Yet she had been invited. She replayed the email in her mind, clinging to every word as if it were a lifeline. Selected applicants will have the opportunity to speak with foundation representatives during the gala. Opportunity, not a guarantee, but it was all she had left. As the bus neared downtown, the buildings grew taller, glass and steel rising like another world entirely. Naomi stepped off and adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, her legs feeling heavy with dread. She checked her phone again, no new messages. She pictured her mother on the couch, struggling for breath, Maya trying to be brave. The eviction notice tucked behind the bills on the counter, bright red letters screaming final warning. The pressure inside her chest mounted until it felt like she might break in two. What if they turn me away? What if I say the wrong thing? What if this is just another door slammed in my face? She paused on the sidewalk, hands shaking as she pressed her palms together, whispering a prayer she didn't fully believe in anymore. "Please," she murmured, "just let someone listen." Naomi wasn't chasing comfort or luxury. She was chasing survival. She was chasing one prescription bottle that could give her mother another year, another month, another day. And she knew the risk. She knew walking into a place like that, wearing a dress bought for $12 with tired eyes and a voice that shook when she talked about need, meant opening herself up to judgment, to humiliation, to being reminded once again of where she stood in the world. But desperation stripped away pride. It forced choices that dignity alone never would. Naomi squared her shoulders and started toward the towering building where the gala was being held, its entrance draped in banners and fresh flowers, valet lines already forming. If she failed today, there would be no backup plan, no more calls to make, no more favors to ask, just the sound of her mother's breathing growing weaker. As she reached the steps leading up to the entrance, Naomi felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear alone, but from the unbearable weight of responsibility. She wiped her face quickly, refusing to walk and looking broken. She had made her decision. No matter how painful it became, she would ask for help, because doing nothing was no longer an option. The closer Naomi got to the building, the smaller she felt. The Hartwell Center rose before her like a monument, towering glass walls reflecting the sky, polished stone steps lined with fresh white flowers and velvet ropes. Valets in crisp black uniforms opened doors for guests stepping out of luxury cars that gleamed like they had never known dust. Naomi slowed her pace. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. She smoothed her dress again, the familiar gesture grounding her nerves. The navy fabric was clean and modest, but under the unforgiving glare of the afternoon sun and the glittering confidence of those around her, it felt suddenly thin, like armor made of paper. A woman in a champagne-colored gown passed by, heels clicking sharply. She glanced at Naomi, her eyes lingering just long enough to register curiosity, then dismissal. Naomi looked down, her cheeks warming. "Don't shrink," she told herself. "You have every right to be here." But the doubt crept in anyway. She could hear her mother's voice in her head. "Don't let anyone make you feel small." She could see Maya's worried eyes, trying to be brave when she should have been worrying about homework and friends, not hospital bills. Naomi inhaled slowly. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about survival. As she reached the base of the steps, she stopped. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat and the distant murmur of laughter drifting out through the open doors. Inside, crystal chandeliers glittered, and the hum of wealth and ease floated freely, voices unburdened by fear of rent or medicine. She watched as an older man in a tailored tuxedo handed his invitation to the organizer at the entrance. The organizer, sharp suit, sharp smile, checked the list briefly and waved him in without a second glance. Another guest, another easy entry. Naomi tightened her grip on her bag. She rehearsed her words silently. "Hello, my name is Naomi Carter. I received an invitation. I applied for the caregiver assistance program. I just need to speak with someone for a few minutes." She repeated it again and again. Her heart pounded so loudly she worried it might betray her nervousness. A sudden memory flashed through her mind, standing in a grocery store line months ago, counting change while the man behind her sighed loudly. The cashier's polite smile turning thin as Naomi apologized for holding things up. Humiliation had a way of staying with you. She glanced at the glass doors, seeing her reflection faintly superimposed over the glittering interior. She looked tired. Her eyes carried years of worry, but there was something else there too. Resolve. Naomi had walked miles to work in the rain. She had stayed up nights monitoring her mother's breathing. She had swallowed her own fear countless times for the sake of others. She could take a few more steps. A gust of wind brushed past her, lifting the hem of her dress slightly. Naomi took it as a sign, or maybe she just needed one. She climbed the steps. At the top, she paused again, her hand hovering over the zipper of her bag to make sure the invitation was still there. It was. Good. Inside, the air was cool and scented with fresh flowers and something expensive she couldn't name. Soft music drifted through the lobby, and the low murmur of conversation echoed off the marble walls. Naomi took one final breath, then she stepped forward. She didn't know yet that the man waiting just inside, the one who would laugh at her clothes, who would strip her dignity in front of strangers, had already noticed her the moment she crossed the threshold. She also didn't know that someone else had noticed too. Someone quieter. Someone watching not her dress but her posture, the way she held herself despite the fear, the way she clutched her bag like it contained her entire world, because it did. As Naomi approached the organizer, invitation in hand, hope and fear walked side by side within her. And in just moments that fragile balance would shatter, because judgment was waiting, and mercy had not yet decided to speak. The organizer noticed Naomi immediately, not with curiosity, not with neutrality, with suspicion. His eyes flicked from her face to her dress, then back again, his expression tightening as though something sour had crossed his tongue. He didn't smile like he had for the guests before her. He didn't offer a greeting. Instead, he held out his hand impatiently. "Invitation." Naomi swallowed and passed him the envelope with both hands, trying to keep them from shaking. "Good afternoon," she said softly. "My name is Naomi Carter. I received an invitation and I was told I could speak with someone from the foundation." The organizer glanced at the envelope for less than a second. His brow furrowed, not in confusion but annoyance. You, he said flatly. The word alone felt like a slap. Yes, Naomi replied, nodding quickly. I applied for the caregiver assistance program. He cut her off with a short laugh, the kind meant to embarrass. Caregiver assistance, he repeated loudly, making sure nearby guests could hear. This is a gala, not a welfare office. A couple standing behind Naomi shifted uncomfortably. Someone to her left raised a phone a little higher. Naomi's cheeks burned. I understand, but the email said selected applicants would be present tonight. The organizer sighed theatrically and waved his hand at her outfit. Look, I don't know who forwarded you that message, but this is a formal event. He leaned closer, lowering his voice, but not enough. People here donate more in one night than you probably make in a year. A few murmurs rippled through the lobby. Naomi's lips parted, then closed again. She felt like every word she'd practiced had evaporated. I followed the dress code, she said quietly. This is what I have. The organizer straightened and laughed loud, sharp, cruel. This, he scoffed. This looks like something you'd wear to church on a weekday. A woman nearby snorted before quickly covering her mouth. Naomi's eyes glistened. Sir, please, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need 5 minutes with someone who can help me. He shook his head slowly, as if dealing with a child who refused to understand. What you need, he said coldly, is to stop embarrassing yourself. His voice rose. Do you have any idea how much pressure we're under to maintain standards here? We can't just let anyone wander in because they need something. The word anyone echoed. Naomi felt her knees weaken. She clutched her bag tighter, knuckles whitening. I was invited, she whispered, holding up the envelope again like proof of existence. The organizer didn't even look at it this time. People like you always say that. Silence fell thick and suffocating. The lobby had grown quiet, not because people disapproved, but because they were watching, waiting, consuming the moment like entertainment. Naomi scanned the faces around her. A man in a tux avoided her gaze entirely. A woman with pearls tilted her head, curiosity flickering but no compassion. Someone whispered, security should handle this. No one said stop. No one said that's enough. The organizer folded his arms. I'm going to ask you one last time to leave. Naomi's voice trembled. If I leave, my mother might not make it. The words slipped out before she could stop them. A few heads turned. Someone scoffed. The organizer's expression hardened. Don't play the sympathy card with me, he snapped. We hear sob stories every day. Sob story. Naomi flinched as if struck. I'm not lying, she said, tears spilling now despite her efforts. I just need help. I wouldn't be here otherwise. He leaned in, eyes cold. Then maybe you should have thought about that before showing up dressed like this, expecting handouts from people who earned what they have. The humiliation was complete. Naomi felt exposed, stripped bare in front of strangers who measured her worth by fabric and posture. The silence of the crowd pressed in, louder than his words, heavier than her fear. And as the organizer gestured sharply toward the exit, dismissing her like she was nothing more than a stain on the marble floor, Naomi realized something devastating. She was completely alone. And this place, this shining hall of generosity and wealth, had no room for her humanity. Naomi stood there, unable to move. The organizer's hand remained pointed toward the exit, his fingers stiff, impatient, waiting for her to disappear. The message was clear: you don't belong, leave. Her legs felt like they were made of glass. I'm sorry, Naomi whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I didn't mean to cause a scene. Her apology sliced deeper than the insults. She bowed her head slightly, the way she had learned to do in moments like this, not out of guilt, but survival. Years of being misunderstood had taught her that sometimes apologizing was the only way to make the pain end faster. I thought maybe someone would listen, she said, her voice cracking. I won't take long, I promise. The organizer rolled his eyes. Unbelievable, he muttered. You hear that, folks, she promises. A few awkward chuckles echoed weakly. Naomi's hands trembled violently now. Tears blurred her vision, streaking down her cheeks no matter how hard she tried to blink them away. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold herself together, but her body betrayed her. She felt small, smaller than she had ever felt. Her mind raced, images of her mother gasping for air, Maya's trembling voice on the phone, the eviction notice screaming from the kitchen counter, all of it crashing down at once. If you don't leave right now, the organizer said sharply, I'll have security escort you out. The word escort felt like a final humiliation. Naomi nodded slowly, swallowing a sob. Okay, she said, I'm leaving. Her voice was barely audible. She turned, her shoulders slumped, the weight of defeat pressing her spine downward. Each step toward the exit felt like walking through mud. She could feel eyes burning into her back, feel the silence swallowing her whole. No one stopped her. No one spoke her name. No one said, "This isn't right." That silence hurt more than anything the organizer had said. Halfway to the door, Naomi's breath hitched violently, her chest tightened, panic flooding her system. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to quiet the sound of her sobs. This is it, she thought. This is where it ends. No help, no hope. She reached the door and paused, her hand hovering just inches from the handle. Leaving meant admitting defeat, not just for herself, but for everyone who depended on her. Her knees buckled. Naomi caught herself on the edge of a nearby table, her bag slipping from her shoulder and spilling its contents across the polished floor. Papers scattered, medical records, pharmacy receipts, the eviction notice sliding face up for all to see. A few people gasped softly. Naomi dropped to her knees instinctively, scrambling to gather the papers, her tears falling freely now. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Her hands shook so badly she could barely pick them up. The organizer scoffed. "This is exactly why we don't let situations like this happen," he said loudly. "It turns into a mess." A mess. Naomi froze. She stared down at the papers in her hands, at her mother's diagnosis printed in black ink, at the proof of a life unraveling. Her shoulders shook as a quiet, broken sob escaped her. For a brief, devastating moment, she considered just leaving everything there, standing up and walking out, letting the door close behind her and accepting that some battles were simply unwinnable. She looked up once more, not to beg, but to see if anyone would meet her eyes. They didn't. Faces turned away. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. The crowd reclaimed its comfort, choosing indifference over courage. Naomi lowered her gaze. She gathered the last paper, folded it carefully despite the tears soaking through, and slowly rose to her feet. Her spirit felt crushed, her hope gone, and just as she reached for the door, believing with every fiber of her being that she had lost everything, a calm, steady voice cut through the room. "Excuse me." Two simple words, spoken without anger, without cruelty, but with unmistakable authority. The room stilled. Naomi's hand froze on the door handle because someone, finally, had decided to speak. "Excuse me?" The voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It didn't demand attention, yet somehow it commanded it. The low murmur of the lobby faded as heads turned toward the source. Naomi's hand slipped from the door handle, her breath catching as she slowly looked over her shoulder. A man stepped forward from the crowd. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that didn't scream wealth but whispered it. No flashy cufflinks, no exaggerated confidence, just quiet presence. His silver-streaked hair was neatly combed, and his expression was composed, almost serene. But his eyes, they were fixed on Naomi, not on her dress, not on the papers still clutched in her trembling hands, on her. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked calmly. The organizer scoffed, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Sir, everything is under control." The man glanced briefly at him, then back at Naomi. "It doesn't look like it." Naomi felt her throat tighten. No one had spoken to her like that all evening, not as a nuisance, not as a problem, but as a person. "I'm sorry," she said instinctively, her voice barely steady. "I was leaving." The man raised a hand gently, not to stop her physically, but to signal patience. "There's no need to apologize," he said, his tone warm. "You haven't done anything wrong." The organizer laughed sharply. "With all due respect, sir, this woman is disrupting a private event. She doesn't meet the standards required to be here." The man turned fully toward the organizer now, his posture relaxed but firm. "Standards," he repeated slowly. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" The organizer straightened, emboldened by the assumption that this was just another guest. "This is a high-profile charity gala," he said. "We have donors, executives, international partners. We can't allow uninvited individuals to cause scenes." Naomi's lips parted, but no words came out. "Uninvited?" The man tilted his head slightly. "She said she has an invitation." The organizer waved dismissively. "Anyone can print an email these days." A few people murmured in agreement. The man's jaw tightened just slightly. "May I see it?" he asked, looking at Naomi. Her hands shook as she held out the envelope. He took it carefully, like it mattered, and examined it closely. He didn't rush. He didn't scoff. He read. Naomi watched his face, fear coiling in her chest. She braced herself for disappointment, for him to hand it back with a polite apology and step away like everyone else had. Instead, his eyes flicked back up to hers. "Naomi Carter," he read aloud. "Caregiver assistance applicant." She nodded. "Yes, sir." He handed the invitation back to her. "Thank you." Then he turned to the organizer. "She is exactly where she's supposed to be." The organizer laughed outright now. "Sir, I don't know who you think you are, but—" "I haven't finished," the man said quietly. The laughter died in his throat. Something in the man's voice shifted, not louder, not aggressive, but edged with unmistakable authority, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. "You've humiliated this young woman," he continued, his gaze steady. "You've spoken to her in a way that is unacceptable in any space, let alone one claiming to represent charity and compassion." The organizer scoffed again, though less confidently. "This doesn't concern you." The man's eyes hardened. "It concerns me when someone is abused in front of a room full of people who choose silence." The word abused rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Naomi's chest rose sharply. No one had named it before. The organizer crossed his arms. "If she has a problem, she can take it up with management." The man gave a small, almost sad smile. "That's exactly what I'm doing." The organizer laughed nervously. "You're just another guest, stay in your lane." A few people chuckled uncertainly. Naomi looked between them, confused, her heart pounding. She didn't know who this man was, but something about him felt different, grounded, unafraid. He turned to her again, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Are you all right?" The kindness in his tone nearly broke her. She nodded shakily. I think so." "Good," he said softly. "Then please stay right here." He straightened and faced the organizer once more. "I suggest," he said evenly, "that you reconsider how you're handling this situation." The organizer smirked, emboldened by the lack of recognition. "Or what?" The man held his gaze. "Or you're about to make a very serious mistake." A hush fell over the lobby. Naomi felt it, the air changing, the balance shifting, though she didn't yet understand why, because the organizer still had no idea. He was standing face to face with the man who held his entire future in his hands. And in just moments the truth would come crashing down. The organizer let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Listen," he said, adjusting his jacket as if bored. "I don't care who you think you are. This woman is not welcome here, and neither is your little performance." The man didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into the inside pocket of his suit and removed his phone. A few people in the crowd shifted, sensing something was different now. The murmurs grew quieter, curiosity replacing amusement. The man glanced at the screen, then looked up. "Before you embarrass yourself further," he said calmly, "I'll give you one last chance to correct this." The organizer rolled his eyes. "Security, stop," the man said, one word, sharp, final. The organizer froze mid-gesture. The man turned slightly, his voice carrying now not loud but impossibly clear. "I'd like everyone to listen carefully." The room went silent. Even the music seemed to fade into the background. "My name is Daniel Hartwell," he said, "founder and principal sponsor of the Hartwell Foundation." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones dropped lower, eyes widened. A woman near the front clasped her hand to her mouth, the organizer's face drained of color. "And no," he stammered, forcing a laugh that cracked halfway through. "That's not funny." Daniel didn't smile. He tapped his phone once. Almost immediately, a large digital screen behind the registration desk lit up, switching from a slideshow of smiling donors to a live video feed. Daniel Hartwell's face appeared on the screen. The same calm eyes, the same silver-streaked hair, the same man. A wave of shock swept through the lobby like an electric current. "Oh my God, that's him." "I didn't recognize him." The organizer staggered back a step. I didn't know," he said quickly, panic flooding his voice. "Mr. Hartwell, I swear, if I had known." "That," Daniel interrupted quietly, "is exactly the problem." He turned, gesturing gently toward Naomi. "This young woman," he continued, "is Naomi Carter. She is one of the most compelling caregiver applicants we have ever received." Naomi's breath caught. The room felt unreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's life. "She works 2 jobs," Daniel went on. "She is the sole provider for her family. She cares for a chronically ill mother and a younger sister, all without complaint, without recognition." Naomi's knees trembled. "I personally flagged her application," he said. "I personally requested that she be invited tonight." The organizer's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Daniel's gaze hardened. "And you laughed at her clothes." The words fell like a verdict. "You humiliated her. You dismissed her pain. You judged her worth based on appearance, inside a building funded to fight exactly that kind of injustice." He let the silence sit. Every eye in the room was on the organizer now. Daniel took one step closer to him. "You don't get to decide who belongs here." The organizer's voice shook. "Mr. Hartwell, please, I was just doing my job." "No," Daniel said. "You were abusing your position." He turned to the crowd. "Let this be clear to everyone watching. Charity without humanity is cruelty in disguise." Naomi felt tears spill again, but these were different. They burned with disbelief, with something fragile and unfamiliar. Relief. Daniel turned back to her, his expression softening. Naomi, I am deeply sorry for what you've just endured. She shook her head weakly. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to, he said gently. That's why this matters. He straightened once more, his voice firm. This ends now. The organizer stood frozen, exposed. His earlier arrogance collapsed into terror. The power had shifted completely, and there was no undoing what he had done. Because justice, real justice, had finally arrived, Daniel Hartwell didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Effective immediately, he said, turning slightly so his words carried to the entire room. You are relieved of your duties. The organizer blinked as if he hadn't heard correctly. Yes, sir. You're done, Daniel repeated calmly. Not after tonight, not after a review, right now. A murmur surged through the crowd, sharp, stunned, undeniable. You can't, the organizer began, panic cracking through his voice. I've worked here for years. This was a misunderstanding. Daniel held up a hand. You misunderstood nothing, he said evenly. You made deliberate choices, and those choices have consequences. The organizer's shoulders sagged. His face, once smug and superior, now looked small, bare, exposed under the same judgment he had so eagerly handed out. Security, Daniel said, turning slightly. Two guards stepped forward immediately, not toward Naomi this time, but toward the organizer. This man will be escorted out, Daniel continued. His access revoked. HR will be notified, and a formal investigation will follow regarding discriminatory conduct and abuse of authority. The organizer's eyes darted around the room, searching desperately for sympathy. He found none. Guests who had laughed earlier now avoided his gaze. Phones that once recorded Naomi now recorded him. The shift was brutal and complete. As he was led away, his voice cracked. I didn't know who she was, Daniel answered without turning around. That's exactly why you failed. The doors closed behind the organizer, and the lobby fell into a heavy, reverent silence. Then Daniel turned back to Naomi. She stood rigid, clutching her bag, her mind struggling to catch up with reality. Her humiliation still clung to her skin, but now it was layered with shock, overwhelming, disorienting shock. Daniel approached her slowly, lowering himself just enough to meet her eye level. Naomi, he said gently, are you able to walk with me? She nodded, tears spilling freely now. Yes, I think so. He offered his arm, not as a display, not as charity, but as respect. Naomi hesitated only a second before taking it. As they walked through the lobby together, something extraordinary happened. People moved out of the way, not because Naomi was invisible, but because she was finally seen. Daniel led her to a quiet seating area away from the crowd. Someone brought water. Another staff member quietly retrieved her scattered papers and handed them back neatly organized. Daniel waited until Naomi had taken a sip before speaking again. I've read your application more times than I can count, he said softly. Your words stayed with me. Naomi shook her head, disbelief in her eyes. I thought no one would even notice it. I noticed, he said, because it wasn't polished, it was honest. Her lips trembled. My mom, she's sick. We can't afford the medication. I didn't come here to beg. I just didn't know what else to do. Daniel nodded slowly. You did exactly what you should have done, you asked. He paused, then continued carefully. The Hartwell Foundation will cover your mother's medical treatment in full. Medication, specialist care, transportation. Naomi's breath hitched violently. In full? Yes, he said simply. Starting today. She broke. Naomi covered her face with both hands as sobs shook her body, deep, silent sobs that carried months of fear and exhaustion. Daniel waited, giving her the dignity of time. When she finally looked up again, her eyes were red, her voice barely steady. I don't know how to thank you. You already have, he said, by surviving, by loving your family the way you do. He wasn't finished. We'll also be providing housing support, Daniel continued. A safe apartment closer to your mother's treatment center, no eviction, no instability. Naomi's mouth fell open. And, he added gently, a stipend so you can reduce your working hours and take care of yourself too. She shook her head in disbelief. This doesn't feel real. Daniel smiled faintly. It will, he leaned back slightly. There's more, but I don't want to overwhelm you. Naomi let out a shaky laugh through tears. I think I passed overwhelmed 5 minutes ago. A soft chuckle rippled through the small group around them. Daniel's expression grew thoughtful. Naomi, if you're willing, we'd also like to sponsor your education, nursing, social work, whatever path you choose. Her heart felt like it might burst. You don't just deserve help, he said quietly. You deserve a future. Naomi reached for his hand, gripping it with trembling fingers. I promise, she said through tears, I won't waste this. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. I know you won't. Around them, the gala resumed, but differently now. Quieter, humbled, witnesses to something far more powerful than wealth. Justice had been served, and compassion had finally spoken. 3 years later, the morning sunlight poured through wide windows, warming a space that once felt unimaginable. Naomi Carter stood in the kitchen of her apartment, listening to the gentle hum of life around her. The place was modest but bright, filled with plants on the windowsills and framed photographs lining the walls. There was laughter here now, ease, breath. On the couch, her mother rested comfortably, reading a paperback novel with her glasses perched low on her nose. The oxygen machine that once dominated their living space was gone, replaced by a simple inhaler resting nearby, rarely needed these days. Naomi, Lena called out, smiling, you're going to be late. Naomi laughed softly. I know, I know. She adjusted the strap of her bag, this one filled with textbooks and a stethoscope, and glanced at the clock. She was in her final year of nursing school now, something that once lived only in the quiet corners of her dreams. Across the room, Maya bounced in place, nervously fixing her jacket. You ready? She asked, excitement lighting her eyes. First day at the community center? Naomi's smile widened. More than ready. Maya had earned a full scholarship through the Hartwell Foundation's Youth Leadership Program. She spent her weekends tutoring younger kids from neighborhoods just like the one they grew up in, kids who needed someone to believe in them early. As they stepped outside, Naomi paused for a moment, breathing in the crisp air. Life hadn't become perfect, but it had become possible. Later that afternoon, Naomi stood in front of a room filled with women, caregivers, single parents, daughters carrying responsibilities too heavy for their years. She spoke calmly, confidently, her voice no longer shaking. I used to think asking for help meant failure, she said, but I've learned it actually means courage. The women listened intently. I was judged once for how I looked, Naomi continued, but someone chose to see who I was instead, and that changed everything. In the back of the room, Daniel Hartwell sat quietly, unnoticed by most. He watched Naomi with a soft smile, not pride exactly, but something deeper, recognition. After the session, Naomi approached him. You saved my life, she said gently. Daniel shook his head. No, he replied. You saved your own, I just opened a door. Naomi nodded, understanding now. That evening, she returned home to her family, whole, safe together. As she tucked her mother in and helped Maya study, Naomi felt something she had never truly known before. Peace. The kind that settles deep in your bones. Moral, never judge a person by their appearance. You have no idea what battles they're fighting or what strength they carry inside. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact can last a lifetime. Sometimes, one moment of compassion is all it takes to change a life forever. If this story moved you, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope today. And subscribe to our channel for more powerful, inspirational stories that remind us of our shared humanity.